Ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me? You've ruined my opening line. I had something very personal to share with you. I'm going to depart from protocol because, as you all know, despite your very long and distinguished careers of everyone sitting in this hall, a first is always lovely. And this is the first time that I can say, welcome to this session of the International Security Forum. Welcome to Halifax. Welcome to my home. Now, if there was a good Afghan in the audience to say, Lise, but this is not your home, this is not your Wolastoqey, this is not your district, and that's true. It's the Wolastoqey of Peter MacKay, who is from Halifax region. I'm from New Brunswick, which is the province next door, but we're all from the maritime provinces. And I think Peter MacKay has been saying for some time to Greg Kennedy, if you truly are a transatlantic forum, you have to come to Canada. Not just to Canada, but to Eastern Canada. Credit to Craig, he took it seriously. So he went and Googled Atlantic Canada. And you know what? There were thousands of entries about Miami. And so he's been talking to you about Miami. And, you know, I shouldn't really, you know, journalism is an excuse for bad manners. And I have to say, Craig, Miami is where people from Atlantic Canada go to escape the winter. So we do know a lot about Miami here, but this is not Miami. Atlantic Canada is a perfect place to hold a session on Afghanistan because we too have had many NATO armies invading us over the centuries, but they used to call them explorers and missionaries. And also, Atlantic Canada is a good place because, as Peter MacKay knows very well, a very high percentage of the Canadian Armed Forces come from the maritime provinces. And so here in the Maritimes, we feel acutely the losses of Canadian soldiers, even in my own hometown, but we also feel the pride. So welcome to the session on Afghanistan. Thank you for turning up for this early session.
You need to shut it off.
What is the title?
Run into conflicts
The
with
title
microphones in the main
itself
room.
is troubling. Transition to what? Question mark. That means, that suggests, that 8 years after the fall of the Taliban, that Afghanistan and its international partners are not agreed on where Afghanistan is going, where it should be going, and how to get there. It is, as the German Marshall Fund described it, the deteriorating political and security situation in Afghanistan is one of the most urgent challenges facing the international community today. Does anyone here this morning disagree with that assessment? We want to look at that in the next hour and a half. What are some of the questions we want to examine? What are realistic goals in Afghanistan now? What about the transatlantic partnership? Despite the overwhelming resources, both troops and aid by the United States, this is a partnership of NATO allies and much more. What about a credible partner in Kabul, in the Afghan government, and in Hamid Karzai? How important is that? And can we talk about the situation in Afghanistan without addressing the situation in Pakistan too? Now, sadly, because the event has coincided with the inauguration, the presidential inauguration in Kabul, no senior members of the Afghan government, including President Karzai himself, who has come before to the German Marshall Fund, were unable to attend. But what did we hear from the presidential palace this week? We heard a commitment to fight corruption, to choose competent ministers. We heard from a president saying that in 5 years, Afghan security forces would take the lead when it comes to security and stability. We also heard there's going to be a corruption conference, there's going to be a Loya Jirga, there's going to be an international conference. So we've heard from the palace what they plan to do. This morning, we're going to hear from 4 people who have followed Afghanistan closely, who've been involved in Afghanistan. Where do they think Afghanistan is going? We have Senator John McCain, Republican senator, naval aviator, prisoner of war in Vietnam, leading senator. They call him a maverick. He's also been a very outspoken spokesperson on the missions in Iraq and Afghanistan, and a defender of American troops. Rick Hillier, General Hillier, retired, another maverick. They call him a soldier's soldier. He comes from the Woolaswally, a little bit further from where Peter McKay and myself come from Newfoundland. He says that when he was growing up, he wanted to be a soldier most of all, a soldier first, and indeed that is the title of his recently published book, A Soldier First. But gentlemen, I'm afraid if we had a competition for who was the top maverick, it must go to Michael Semple. Michael Semple joins us from the Carr Center at Harvard University. He has been working in Afghanistan since 1989. And Michael gives a whole new meaning for what General Hillier will know about camouflage. It's what the military uses to blend into the environment in the countries in which they're working. Michael speaks the languages, the main languages of Afghanistan, Pashto and Persian. He has an unparalleled network of contacts there, and is known for his research and his writing now on the whole messy question, but crucial question of reconciliation. Last but not least, a longtime friend and colleague, Najim Sethi, who has traveled all the way from the Pakistani city of Lahore to join us. You know that phrase about how the war is on your doorstep? Well, sadly for Najim, the war in Afghanistan is not only on his doorstep in Lahore, it's trying to get into his house. And he has been awarded for his bravery in speaking out on the situation in his own country, Pakistan, and also in Afghanistan. He recently won the Golden Pen of Freedom Award. He's the editor-in-chief of the Daily Times and also has a television program in Pakistan. Welcome to all of you. All right, a journalist always likes to know the terrain. Actually, soldiers, politicians always like to know the terrain they're operating in. I'd like to start with all of you, and starting with you, Senator McCain. Where do you see Afghanistan going in the next 12 to 18 months? We know that General Stanley McChrystal has already said he's got about a year to make some progress. So where do you think Afghanistan will be 12, 18 months' time?
Well, I assume that the President of the United States will make a decision that largely implements the strategy recommended by General McChrystal. I don't know if it, in fact, I even doubt if it's exact, but I assume that the President will, and every indication to me is that that'll be the case. And after some delay, we will probably within a week or two have that decision. If that's the case, then I think within a year to 18 months we can see a reversal of what General McChrystal has described as a deteriorating situation. We can see some progress in going into areas such as the Fishhook area around Kandahar, where we can perhaps address some of the poppy issues. I think we can see some success in the training of the Afghan army, which will be a long process given the small numbers that they are in today. And so I think we can show our friends and allies some signs of success. It's not going to be easy. Casualties will go up, I'm sorry to say, just as they did in Iraq at the implementation of the surge. And it will require a degree of steadfastness that will try the governments, not only of our allies, but of the United States as well, as public opinion may be not totally in favor of what we're doing.
You've spoken of success in the next 12 to 18 months, but unless you were quoted incorrectly, you were quoted in the papers today here in Canada as saying you think the war can be won in the next 12 to 18 months. Is that your view?
I think it depends on what your definition, obviously, of won is. There will not be any surrender ceremonies nor parades down Broadway in New York City, but I think we can see a situation such as we have seen in Iraq as a result of the surge. Flawed but functioning democracy, perhaps the only one outside of Israel in the Middle East, a military and police that are effective, not always perfect, and probably continued violence for years to come in the form of suicide bombings, etc., but a government that continues to improve. There are many issues that all of us will be discussing. I would point out that at the time the surge began, the Maliki government was far, far worse off than the Karzai government is. And the country was riven by total sectarian violence. So there are some advantages to the situation that we are in today, including having learned a lot of lessons in Iraq.
General Hillier, 12 to 18 months, where will it be?
Well, here's where I think that we have to be. One is we have to have beaten the incrementalism that we have gotten into with NATO, with the security surge that's going to be sufficient to do the job. We've got one shot to do it. I think we've got a window of 12 to 18 months to make the impression, make a strategic change on the security side. That's one. Two, I think the government of Afghanistan, President Karzai, has got an opportunity in the next 3 to 6 to 9 months to convince all of us and Afghans that they are actually going to have an effective government that can deliver the programs people want without overwhelming corruption. And I think actually it's 6 months that he's got to take actions, and actions speak loudly to convince us that he is changing the government, and then with a loyal jirga, tell us what Afghans want to do in their country in the future with respect to governance. Three, I think we have to change the developmental, the economic investment model. I think we've got to shape the investment through the Afghan government in a way that we simply have not done heretofore. Countries and agencies that invest have got to support the government, and at the same time, we've got to support the government in building the structures to be effective. And lastly, we've got to have Pakistan continue to realize that the Taliban, in my view, are the greatest threat to their society, and unless they are willing to neutralize that Taliban stronghold on the northwest frontier, stop the incursions across the border, but most importantly, stop the command structure from operating inside of Pakistan relatively freely, that is going to remain a major challenge. I think we've got an 18-month window to make a strategic change on the security, governance, economic, and the regional side.
A lot of shoulds, a lot of got to. I don't know whether Newfies are betting men and women. Do you think they're going to?
Actually, I do, but it will depend upon the international community getting through the incremental approach that we have had for the last 10 years inside of Afghanistan.
Michael Semple?
I think in 12 to 18 months, Afghanistan will still be messy, difficult, and very important. I think that if anything has got better, if there has been any turning of the security situation, it will be because it has become evident that the US and Allied commitment is long-term, that it's not all bet on a short-term surge. It will have got better because there is a political strategy to guide what the US and its allies are doing inside Afghanistan. And it will also have got better because there is some kind of a peace process underway. Not one which promises to deliver in 12 months or 18 months or 24 months, which makes it clear both to the Western allies who are being asked to buy into this, and also to Afghans, that there actually is a peaceful way out of this, that there is eventually an end to the war, but not one which is going to happen in 12 or 18 months.
What do you mean by peace process? Are we talking everyone around the table, or are we talking about deals district by district across the areas most threatened now by the insurgency?
The only kind of thing which is likely to deliver in the short term will be local deals. But that's not good enough to stabilize Afghanistan. A meaningful peace process will be something which does offer an engagement right to the leadership of the insurgency, of course on appropriate terms, whereby they have a chance